Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/MaliciousCompliance. Everyone knows that when Karen walks into a store, everyone should fall at her feet. Well, this time, Karen did not betray herself. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. I'm not a person? The store I work at is very small, so unless it's during weeks where we know it'll be insanely busy, usually there's only one employee working at a time. This time it was yours truly. I had a bit of a rush of customers, and the whole time I had to go to the bathroom. When the last customer left, I waited a couple minutes, then dashed to the restroom. The store's connected to a larger facility, so I have to leave the store to use the restroom. But I always bring the store phone and keep an ear out for the chimes that go off when the door opens. I was just about finished when I heard the chimes down the hall, so I quickly finished up and went to wash my hands. When my store phone goes off, I pick up and wash my hands while I answer. Store I work at, this is OP, how can I help you? Silence. I say hello a couple of times before hanging up, then put the phone down to dry my hands. Phone goes off again, same greeting, no answer. Oh well, we've been getting telemarketers who mute themselves when they call, so I wasn't very concerned. When I'm done, I jog up the hall and enter the store and spot the customer I'd heard come in. Reminder, it's been a minute, maybe a minute and a half since I heard the chimes. Hi, sorry about the wait, how can I help you? I know you were here. Yes. I called. Twice. Oh, I was in the bathroom, ma'am, and I answered your calls. The customer scoffs and rolls her eyes. Of course. I hate when you people do this. Sorry? When you're at work, you do not go to the bathroom. You do not eat or drink. You are not a person when you're working. You do not get luxuries. I'm in absolute shock. I'm sorry for the inconvenience, but my boss and manager are both fine with employees using the restroom when they need to. I'm the only one here, and I'm sorry you had to wait. The customer looks at me like I just slapped her and whips around to leave the store. She leaves me with a effing stupid B and then escapes into the night. I'm left confused because I was just told I'm not a human when I work. Retail is strange. Quick edit. Just wanted to address my employers. My two bosses and my manager are actually my family. My mom's my manager specifically, and they always stand up for us. Like they're the type to back you up on something you got wrong to a customer, then let you know afterwards. I was just completely by myself today, so I didn't have anyone to come over and defend me when Karen started her tirade. I'm amazed that you apologized. You should have told her to F off after saying that. And our second story. Don't want to hire me? Okay then. I'll let you think that over. To understand the setting, you need to know what a cross-docker is. That's a logistics company that ships LTL loads, less that trailer. So let's say that you have a customer that has 2 skids for City A, 3 skids for City B, and a skid for City C. You go to the customer, pick up all of his shipments, then put them in with the other orders for their respective cities. The freight moves across the dock into its destination container. With this arrangement, you spend the day running around picking up orders. Late in the afternoon, the loads start to arrive at the warehouse, and the fun begins. The dock crew worked 4 p.m. to midnight, sometimes later depending on volume. Let's call my friend Charlie. He was a temp in the dispatch office. When he was hired, it was staffed by old manager, manager's nephew, and a day dispatcher who set up the pickups. That was the day shift. Charlie was the afternoon shift along with 2 data entry clerks. So the dock would load a container destined for a particular city. They hand the folder with the weigh bills for each of the shipments in the container to data entry, who get it into the server and generate a manifest. Most of these containers were intermodal, and they were shipped out by train. You've seen ships with containers piled on them? Same thing, except for domestic shipments, they'd use 53-foot containers rather than the 40-foot containers you see on boats. Charlie would take the folder and then verify that everything in the container was headed for the correct city, check for temperature-controlled freight, check for dangerous goods, and make certain the container was placarded correctly. Then he would go online and check the container into the railway system. When Charlie was hired, they were doing about 5 to 10 rail shipments a shift. He was told to copy and paste the information from the railway's webpage into a report, then send a heads-up email at the conclusion of the shift to each of the partner terminals in the respective destination cities. By the time he'd been there 2.5 years, that volume had increased to about 40 to 50 loads a shift. Day shift might handle 3 or 4, and manager and nephew would use the copy and paste routine, but Charlie didn't have the time to do that. His brother was a bit of a techie, so when Charlie noticed that he could export to Excel a report from the rail yard site, he got his brother to write a script that would harvest the relevant info and generate reports for each of the cities, and would do it in a few seconds. Charlie approached manager and asked for a position with the company, as it would be a raise, and he would get health benefits. Manager dragged his feet and finally said no. Charlie thought about it for a bit, then told manager, "I'm going to be taking 2 weeks off starting Monday. Call the agency and get them to send someone else over." Manager was furious, but he didn't have a leg to stand on. He wasn't Charlie's employer, so he had no authority to deny Charlie the time off. Charlie was in good with the agency, one of their stars. Temp workers aren't the most reliable, so anyone who kept his head down and caused no issues was valued, and the agency backed him up. Charlie had friends on the dock, and they kept him informed. The first problem was that the replacement the agency sent had nothing in the way of experience, and the manager had to train him from the ground up. This resulted in many phone calls throughout the evening to manager, which got him more and more cranky as the days went on. The second was the reports. This company was on the West Coast and was shipping across the country. Each destination location had a huddle scheduled at 7 a.m. in their respective time zones, where they would review the incoming shipments. The dock would shut down sometime at 1 a.m., and the new temp needed to get the reports out by 3 or 4 a.m. And the copy and paste routine was taking way too long. Which brings us to the third problem: overtime. The temp was running 12 to 14-hour shifts. Manager delegated nephew to work afternoons to help out. That meant manager had to cover nephew's workload as well as his own. Nephew was not really happy either, as he was a sports fanatic and played hockey several times a week. He had to miss his games. Even with nephew on the job, the reports took forever to get out, and there were mistakes made. And in one case, they had to send the dock foreman racing to the rail yard to placard a container before the yard would accept it. After a week or so, Charlie took the opportunity to distribute his resume and put manager up as a reference, so now manager was getting calls about Charlie and realized that Charlie might not come back. He was taking flamethrower heat from all directions, and his only way out was to put Charlie on the payroll. By this time, the agency had sent 2 temps to cover what Charlie used to do with the oversight of nephew. Manager called Charlie in for an interview. "Okay, Charlie, we'll put you on payroll. We'll pay you the same as the agency paid you, and we'll give you benefits." "No thanks, I have other interested companies that are offering more." "Fine, we'll put you on salary and bump it up by 10%. "Again, no thanks, I won't accept a salaried position unless I get to go home after 40 hours. "If you need me to stay late, you need to pay me overtime." "How much an hour are you looking for?" "Well, I don't know what the agency paid for my services, and right now you have 2 temps working to cover the shift. Tell you what, pay me what you were paying the agency and add the benefits, and you have a deal." "What? That's almost double what you were making before." And that's what other companies are offering. You can cut what you're paying out to the agency by half, and there won't be as many F-ups. Nephew can strap up his skates and you can watch TV all evening without getting phone calls. Or things can continue the way they're going. What's it going to be? Charlie got hired on, made a good chunk more money, and as a sweetener negotiated 3 weeks holidays a year. He not only knew his worth at the job, but he showed the boss what it's like without him, and made him see his worth. Kudos. And our last story. High on the Hogs, a story of pro-family revenge. So one of my brothers is adopted and is amazing. He didn't get anything handed to him in life, and he's seriously one of the hardest working people I know. Just as he was starting his own family, he had even more financial burden due to some medical problems. Still, somehow, he managed to build half a house on some land my dad sold him. He used the equity in that to get a second loan and finish it. He had to fight the bank for that even. Time goes on, and he begins to do really well. So he sells the first house he built at a profit and buys some land. Like 175 acres in the Midwest. He lives in a rural area. He likes to hunt and does some farming on the land, but the house that was there when he bought it isn't ideal, despite some major improvements and renovation. So he builds a third house and puts the house up for sale. He keeps the land around the house for hunting. This is important later. This is when one of his envious family members asks if he and his wife would consider selling them the house. They can only qualify for something like half of what it's worth, but my brother's a fairly generous guy and agrees to sell the house to them at a rather hefty discount since they're family. I'm sure he felt some of their pain as well. He'd had his own difficulty back when he was starting out. The bank agrees to loan them the money. They can't go wrong. It's for way less than the property's worth, and the deal is done. A few short months go by. He's driving by the property and spots a for sale sign. He stops in, and the husband explains that there were some things about the house they weren't happy with, so they were planning on selling it and buying a house more in town or something, etc. My brother explains that they got a sweet deal only because they were family and that he'd appreciate them selling the house back to him for what he sold it to them for. The husband basically closes the door on that, and my brother leaves. And he thinks about it. I'm 100% certain that the family members understood that they were getting a good deal because they were family, and he was happier selling it to them with the understanding that they weren't going to take advantage of his good graces. This is a guy, by the way, that manages big projects. He's a really fair guy. The stuff he does in construction, probably half of you have driven over. Big bridges that go over rivers like the Mississippi, for example. He's used to solving hard problems. This one isn't that hard. The next day, he drives out with some fence in the back of his truck, and the family members in the house wake up to some fence posts being driven into the ground. The husband comes out. "What's going on?" he asks. "Just putting up some hog fence on my property. Don't worry, it's all on my land. I'll just go around your house here and put in a gate so you can get in and out." The husband's a bit perplexed. "You're bringing in pigs?" And my brother was seriously set to do it, too. He had about 100 lined up from a farmer down the road. The husband goes back into the house. A few minutes of discussion occur. The next day, they all meet at the bank, and the deed is transferred back to my brother. And he didn't even have to deploy the hogs. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.